Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. We are happy to have you here on unceded Algonquin land. My name is Josée Whiteduck. I'm from Kitigan, Zibi, the Algonquin Nation. Before we speak words to the Creator, let us have a moment of reflection so our prayers are spoken with careful determination. As we pray, I ask you to think about the important question that we will talk about over the next few days. What is the essence of Indigenous education? It is the link to our past. So we are and have become, and the knowledge we need to survive. It is our present, sharing with the world how to forgive, reconcile, and relate to our Mother Earth, respectfully with a healthy bond. It is our future, with healthy and happy children who share their gifts with the world and who are open to sharing from others. Over the next few days, we will talk about how unique we are, but we are all the same in what we need. We will negotiate, but it should not be only about monies. It should be about what we need to set in place. We will talk about culture. Culture expresses who we are and enable us to express the truth and concepts from our collective learnings from the past, present, and helps us to plan for the future. Culture is also a thing that changes. It is more malleable than we think. So let us reflect and pray that our gifts are hyped so that we can shape the kind of kids and society we dream of. Let us be clear in our voices when we speak to the ancestors, because we are still here today, living in good heart because of prayers prayed before us.
Hey.
And I will say my prayer in my language, which comes from my heart, and offer prayer for all of you here today and the work that you have to do. And I'd like to welcome our, I should have said this at the beginning, I suppose, but things are a little different today. To all the elders here, the chief, who I had running around here for a minute, and our teachers and educators. And I welcome you here today. So let us work together, and in prayer, I will say my prayer.
So welcome to the elders here, chiefs, national chief, Bellegarde, regional chiefs, First Nation educators, directors of education, teachers, students, also welcome. And as Josée said, Elder Josée said, also welcome to Algonquin territory. And I'm very impressed with the size of the crowd. It can't be chiefs, there's lots of people here. Like you guys, the numbers here, so I think it's going to be a very good 2 days. In my experience, my personal experience, education is very important. But also, part of my message is that culture is also very important, especially for First Nation people. I think we know that, especially coming out of residential schools, hearings and results, that a person without an Aboriginal person without their culture has a very difficult time getting along in life. Feeling good about themselves. So I've always felt like culture and education is very, very important together. And I always wonder how to say that succinctly. The person who said it to me very succinctly was National Chief Bellegarde when he was on his day of election, and saying that an Aboriginal person grounded in their culture with a good education is a strong person. And I think that's what we're all here to try to do. A strong person makes a strong family, makes a strong First Nations, strong community, and overall a stronger country. So, again, it's education and culture are very important. Also, part of the problem has been a lack of Aboriginal First Nation curriculum in schools. I think we're all well aware of that. Lack of history, lack of cultural content. It reminds me of what Prime Minister Trudeau said with the codes and ceremonies for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That he recalls his experience of Aboriginal content when he was going to school. He said when it came to time in school, grade school, for the Aboriginal First Nation component to come up, teacher said to him, in class, well, this is not very important, we'll skip that. So that was the importance that First Nation history and content were given in school curriculums, and coming directly from experience by the Prime Minister. And I also agree with him, it's very, very limited. And I just recall a year or two on Northeastern Woodland Indians about how we were. Nothing about today or in the recent history. So I think we're all here to try to correct that and to improve the education system. And then my experience also is that, so now we have some of the school boards and the ministry, especially in Ontario, be more open to Aboriginal content and input by First Nations. And with our local schools and the school board, we're getting along very good in that area, and we do have more cultural content and Aboriginal and First Nation movement at the local elementary schools, drumming, dancing, etc. And what occurs is that the First Nation students walk with the head go higher, and their marks have improved. So I think there's a good example that culture as well as education go hand in hand. I think we do need a First Nation Education Directors Association to support First Nations to do what I just said, to ensure that ministries, school boards, and schools ensure that there is First Nation curriculum, First Nation input, and to understand that education and culture are very important to Aboriginal and First Nation people. So we need an association. Hopefully, this conference will lead towards that direction of having a national association. And I think now is the opportunity, now is the time, because we have a government, a federal government that's committed to a new relationship. So, as I said to some other chiefs, it's time to put the pedal to the metal, keep your foot on the gas, and take advantage of this opportunity. Ensure that we can teach our children and our youth about education, what they want to do for us and for the communities, for themselves and their families, and improve things overall. I'm very impressed with the agenda. There's quite a long and diverse agenda, a number of different topics. We have a lot of them. I'm amazed at how many different organizations are out there across the country, First Nation education organizations. And I'm amazed and surprised, and I think this is going to be a good conference, and hopefully everybody has a good 2 days and comes up with something successful. So again, thank you very much, and welcome you.
Chief Whiteduck, thanks so much for that welcome. Now we're honored as well to have our National Chief here from some of the First Nations. Right now, Josée and Mark's National Chief Harry Bill.
Aquí no te que no como ga, de nascamo. Que nasco tirava, que ultimava, te, square nascala. Uskaya. Algonquins Anishinabeg, que nasco tirava. Está no dominant smanto, nasco. My friends, my relatives, just a little bit in Cree, I'm very happy to be here. Acknowledge the elders, the chiefs, the men, the women, the youth, and of course, acknowledge our Creator. And also acknowledge all of the Algonquin people, the Anishinabeg people in this territory for the welcome. Chief Kirby and Elder Josée. I'll lift up the drum group as well, the Eagle River. Thank you for that heartbeat of Mother Earth. Beautiful songs this morning. And the warm-up song got everybody up. It was the warm-up, but everybody stood up. It was good to get the legs pumping and everybody stand up. So I acknowledge and lift you up as well. Thank you. Mais oui, mes amis, vous êtes très importants dans mes yeux. En français, un petit peu, je parle français. En anglais. Mais oui, my friends, my relatives, again, just a little bit. I wanted to start off in language, our indigenous language. And I wanted to basically always put that first and foremost because I always challenge the myth that Canada was found in a respectful way. French is a beautiful language. English is a beautiful language. But all of our 58 Indigenous nations languages are just as equally important, just as equally as beautiful as those two founding nations because we're here as well. So I always say in a respectful way, we challenge that myth that this great country called Canada was founded on two founding nations when we were here as Indigenous nations here on Turtle Island. So I always want to put that first and foremost. I'll acknowledge my colleagues here, Peter and the AFN team, and 700 people were sold out here, so thank you so much for a good organization. You know, that's good interest. That's good coming together. Regional Chief Bobby Cameron, also Chief Pikwàkanagàn here, all the Grand Chiefs that are here, thank you for coming. How we're set up as an Assembly of First Nations. National Chief, like in Korea, that's why in Korea we have this word oskapas. A helper and a servant, so I don't mind running around for our elders, serving. That's all we are as leaders. We're humble servants of the people. And Regional Chief Bobby Cameron and I've handed off the portfolio of education. And of course, working with our Chiefs Committee on Education, because as Assembly of First Nation, that's how we're structured. We can pass on portfolios, come to consensus that this young man will take care of education for all of us across Canada. Regional Chief Day will take care of health for all of us across Canada. Regional Chief Mackinac on specific claims, Regional Chief Hart on housing and water, but we also work with our Chiefs Committees and our technicians that we have. So we have a Chiefs Committee on Education as well to help drive this agenda forward, this item, this very important item forward. And we always think that, well, if we can get direction and political support from that Chiefs Committee on Education, it should fly when we bring all of our AFN chiefs together in a national forum. You know, so it's getting that direction, that good sounding board. You know, making sure that we're not making a mistake and making sure we're not going off on our own. That we work together and get that good political leadership. I wanted to say as well, just a little bit of a background to December 10. When we brought our chiefs together from across Canada, and we had for the first time, a couple of firsts at that meeting. The first time ever that we had a sitting Prime Minister come to our Chiefs in Assembly. That was a very powerful moment. First time we had the RCMP Commissioner come and admit to racism in that system. First time we had the ministers there to work with our chiefs on a regular basis. So a lot of firsts. But you'll recall as well the commitments that were made. The 5 commitments that were made from the Prime Minister, they mirrored what we wanted to see as a priority prior to October 19th when we lobbied hard. And we put our agenda items forward, our issues forward. And so we see them reflected in the throne speech. We see them reflected in the call letters out to the ministers when they got appointed to cabinet. And we see it reflected in when the Prime Minister came to our Chiefs in Assembly and said these 5 commitments. That there will be an inquiry into missing marriages, women and girls. So we see that going on, pre-consultation phase. They will implement all the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the 94 calls to action. They will remove the 2% funding cap that's been in place for 20 years, which we've always said is a flawed piece of work because it's a cap on potential, a cap on growth. It doesn't keep up with inflation, it doesn't keep up with rising population. It's not even based on total population. So you can't keep up with education or housing or water or anything else. They also talked about the importance of education, the 4th priority. And also the fifth one was a federal law review, which we're expanding to not only a federal law review to repeal C-51 and C-38 and C-45 and Bill C-10 and Bill S-6, but looking at the updating and reviewing of those outdated policies they've had, the comprehensive claims policy, specific claims policy, the inherent right to self-government policy, and of course the addition to reserve policy, which are all based on outdated legislation or outdated recognition, which is basically based on termination of rights, not recognition of rights and title. So all of that has to be expanded. So those 5 areas, the Prime Minister of Canada committed to our chiefs in Assembly. Education now. That one, and that's why you're here. Education. What did the Liberals commit? What were their Liberal Party platforms? Because we know there's a big gap in tuition, on reserve versus off reserve. The numbers I always use, and I use approximate, on the res it's $6,500 per child, approximate. Yet in the provincial school system, it's almost $11,000, $12,000 per child. Then in the French school systems, it's almost $20,000 per child. So there's a huge fiscal imbalance, a huge fiscal gap that exists in terms of on-reserve tuition versus off-reserve. And of course, because of that tuition gap, you can't keep up and compete with teachers' salaries. So most times we get on the reserve school systems, the students are the teachers coming out of the university system with the brand new ones, right? And then they don't stay a lot of times. They might come in for 1 or 2 years and then they leave. So we have issues with teachers' retention, which has an impact on our child's education. Issues because of that lack of comparable fiscal resources being in place. Math and science, computer labs, some libraries have no books, extracurricular activities, the list will go on and on and on and on. So we know that has to be addressed. Then there's the issue of capital. How many schools do we need? We always say, open a school, you close the door on a jail. Getting our kids a good quality education. We always hear those things. So there's O&M, but there's also capital, the building of new schools. And why do we say this is important? I'm from Treaty Territory number 4. I'm from a small reserve called Little Black Bear. And when that treaty commissioner came out on behalf of the Crown, what did he promise our chiefs? Chief Little Black Bear, when you are ready to settle down on that reserve, we will provide a little red brick schoolhouse to you and teachers. And we will teach your children and grandchildren the cunning of the white man. What does that mean? That spirit and intent to education. We didn't ask for residential schools. We didn't ask for genocide of our peoples. But a good quality education. And our elders have always talked about the importance about balance. The balance between Muniao education, like the math and science and all these things over here, literacy, numeracy, are very important. But equally important, our elders always tell us, is this other education. The 2 systems that our children need to walk in. This one over here is your languages, your customs, your traditions, and who you are as an Indigenous person. Walk in both worlds. Our children walk in both worlds. We need these ones over here. K-12, technical vocational skills training, university training, no question. But equally important is this one over here. Your languages, your ceremonies, who you are. Our old people used to always say, my late dad, Gordon, used to always say, it's like a team of horses. Team of horses pulling. You have to have both. Pull in a good direction. Balance. Because this one over here as well, to our young men and women, we say is important because there's freedom from alcohol and drugs in this way. And that's how we rebuild them. Living good, healthy lifestyles, proud of who they are and where they come from. And that language is so vital and so important. Because we know that when a young person is fluent by 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age, they're more successful in school and therefore more successful in life. And studies have shown that importance of identity. Balance. For us now, the work ongoing, when I want to make 2 or 3 points, and then I want to be done because I have to go to another meeting. But the 3 points. I want to talk a little bit about the premiers and why they're important. Because a lot of you here are dealing with on-reserve schools. A lot of chiefs are here. But half of our people reside off the reserves. So when you start talking about Indian control of Indian education, what do you mean? No question on the reserve, on the res, you know? Our school boards and our school board authorities and our policies and good regulations, you know, everything else over here. But half of our people reside off reserve. So what are we doing to influence that system? And when your kids go to town, you've got choices to make. Should we send them to the Catholic school system or should we send them to the public school system? Our private schools, our home schools? We have all these decisions to make. So when we meet with the premiers, we make 7 points to them. And one of them, of course, is curriculum changes. And I've shared this before, but just to give you a little taste of what we got to deal with when we deal with the premiers, here's the 7 points. We tell the premiers, you set up a bilateral process with the chiefs and leaders in your respective territories, respective provinces, so they have access to you as a premier and a cabinet on a regular basis. So Grand Chief Peters, you guys meet with Premier Wynne on a regular basis now. They signed an accord in Ontario. Chief Bobby Cameron, Premier Wall and his cabinet, Tier 1, Tier 2. Treaty 678 Alberta, got things going on. You know, so every province signed that bilateral process so the leadership have access. Because that little government, little crown is still important as well. We can't forget that. So establish that process. Other requests? Change your curriculum. The provinces have control over the curriculum because our children go into their systems. So what are they being taught in their systems? The curriculum that's being taught. What is it? So we said change it to teach treaty and Aboriginal rights and inherent rights. Teach treaties. Because the theme now is we're all treaty people. And also teach residential schools and put those things into the curriculum. The impacts of genocide. I don't call it cultural, it's genocide. So change your curriculums. Treaties and inherent rights, Aboriginal rights, residential schools. Then we also asked them to stabilize the economy, resource revenue sharing tables, free, prior, and informed consent tables, because we as Indigenous people said we'd share the land and resources. We've never given anything up. So you have to establish those processes. That's on the economy. That's another item. And then we talked as well about the languages. Why can't you as premiers and cabinets declare the Indigenous languages of that territory official languages of that territory? They do that in the Northwest Territories for the 11 Dene languages, the 11 Dene something languages up there. Why can't that happen in Ontario? Why can't that happen in Saskatchewan and Alberta? Declare them as official languages of the territory. The other ones, permits and license, this is part of the economy. The last 2 points when we talk to the premiers, these other 2 points are, we tell them before you issue a license or permit to any industry operating in provincial boundaries, you make sure that that company, that business, that big multi-billion-dollar company, has a strategy for engagement of First Nations people when it comes to procurement, when it comes to employment, representative workforce strategy, even resource revenue share. And if they don't, you do not issue them a license or permit. Man, you will see those CEOs come banging on the Indian's door, right? Hey, I need to work with you guys. I need to develop a partnership with you guys. And I'll even let you guys own 51%. All those things can happen if that was changed. And the last one, we tell the premiers, where's your strategy or plan for the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? Very important piece. Very important piece of work. So, when we deal with the premiers, and I know a lot of you will be dealing with the on-reserve piece. Can't forget the off-reserve piece either. As half of our people and our children are in this other system too. And I know a lot of you will focus on the on-reserve piece, which is important. And there's going to be a dialogue and debate. What is the best age for our children to integrate into society? What's the best age? Some will say, no, we want a K-12 school, and then they can integrate when they go to university. Some will say, no, I have an on-reserve school from K to 7, and then my kids are bused into the white school for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, so they integrate from their 9, 11, and 12. And some will say, if I had to do it all over, I've got a K to 9 school, and then they integrate at grades 10. So when is the best age? And some will say, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I get them integrated sooner, because when they're in high school, there's peer groups, there's peer pressure and everything else, and you know, they come in on the Indian bus and there's stigma and all these other stuff happen. Something you got to talk about. Our kids want to fit in. Our kids want to be accepted. They want to be validated. That their language and their ceremonies and as individuals are just as important as everybody else. So when should that happen? Indian control of Indian education is very important, no question. That whole point about integration. The point I was making is integration can work both ways. Integration can work both ways. And I'll give this one example of the importance of acceptance and validation. And as an example of the importance of reconciliation. And being national chief, I tell you, for me, is the greatest job in the world. I get to travel, get to the communities, meet with the elders, meet with the young people, and I get to listen. And I get to observe things that are working, and I also see things that aren't working. I get to see the hurt and pain too. But if we can look at this one positive thing, I'm going to share this one good positive example. And hopefully it kind of sets the example for the day, in the next couple of days. It was at Nipissing First Nation. And I was the local chief there. And he doesn't have a K on-reserve school, you know, for the primary grades. Their kids go to the town. They go to North Bay. And so we went and took a tour of North Bay. And we went to the Catholic school system. And we had the tour all set up. We had the chairman of the Catholic school board there. She was there, all their teachers, their staff. And we went to the grade 4 class at North Bay, Ontario. And the kids from the reserve from Nipissing were bused there. And they go to this grade 4 class, and there's about 14 students. And we come in to this Catholic school system school, grade 4 class. 15 students. About 9 First Nations and 6 non-First Nations. Mixed class, grade 4. And the first thing they did in that Catholic school system, when we walked in, they had a drum song. They had a drum. And remember, this is in the Catholic school system. I thought that was very powerful. And then they smudged. The teachers smudged. The kids smudged. Every kid smudged. Not only the Indian kids, the First Nations kids, the non-First Nations kids smudged. And then they all started speaking Ojibwe. Not only the First Nations kids, the non-First Nations kids too. And they were so proud. They were so proud. That's acceptance and validation. They weren't rolling their eyes saying, oh, more Indian stuff. They were embracing it. They were loving it. And you could just feel the pride in that room. And the kids were saying their names, you know, Kirby, Bellegarde, doesn't cost, you know. Some of them told their clan, you know. North Bay, Zibi. Even the white kids were saying that. That was so powerful as an example of reconciliation, but acceptance and validation. That Ojibwe is equally as important as French and English. Equally as important. And just to see that validation and acceptance, you can see that pride, you know. So I'll share that one story. And the other one I want to share was what equal investments are made in our children in our school systems. And I lift up former Prime Minister Paul Martin Foundation, the initiative they did at Kettle at Stony Point and Cape Coker. For the past 3 to 4 years, they put a lot of resources in numeracy and literacy and teachers to make sure that those schools had the comparable resources and the resources necessary and the supports necessary. And when they did the tests 3 or 4 years ago, they were down here, the kids. But 3 or 4 years later, they surpassed provincial standards. They surpassed provincial standards. And when Chief Tom, at the ceremony, he was brought to tears because he said, our kids aren't stupid. Our kids aren't lazy. Our kids aren't backwards. With the equal kind of supports, they can exceed or meet provincial standards. And that's what it's all about. That's what this forum is all about. Getting our kids successful. Getting our children balanced. Walking in both worlds. That team of horses going forward. So, my friends, my relatives, I wanted to share that much with you all this morning. I know under Chief Bobby Cameron's leadership and our Chiefs of Indian Education and our national Indian education technicians, we can find a way going forward with this very important item. March 22nd is budget day. Very important day. We're all watching and waiting. We've met with the finance minister not once but twice, putting our systems of things we need to see in place to close the gap, the proper investments, and education is a priority, no question. I don't know, I wish I could have the answer. Here's what it's going to be. We don't have that. March 22nd is a very important day. Let's just keep working together, sharing ideas, finding common ground, and we're going to make this country better than it is now. When our children get that good two systems of education and get that pride back into who they are, and we'll close that gap together. So I want to share that much with you all, and have a next 2 days a very enjoyable, beneficial, and good feedback. It's all about working together. It was it.
Thank Creator for this beautiful day. Josée, thank you for the opening prayer. Our drum group, thank you very much for your songs. For leadership who are here, and more importantly, our directors of education and all the educators from coast to coast to coast, who are here for one common goal, for our children and our youth. So that we give them the opportunity, we provide them the tools to a good quality education. And in doing so, that they become adults, finish grade 12, and that they instill in themselves the values, the beliefs, and teachings they learn with their kokums, their parents, their grandparents, and the educators who are in the room. That when I finish grade 12, it doesn't stop here. I'm going to go on to post-secondary education. Now, Perry and I had the pleasure, we had the honor and the privilege to be invited by our Prime Minister about 3 weeks ago. And we spent 4 hours with him privately in his plane. And the big item of discussion was education, lifelong learning, early childhood learning, post-secondary student support program. That was one of the biggest items we discussed with our PM. And, thank you to each and every one of you for voting in this last federal election. Because we've tried our darndest, we've tried our best in the last 5 years to have good dialogue, good discussion, and more importantly, respectful communication from the past government. But it just wasn't there, It just wasn't there. Now, we have a small window of opportunity to really garner or capitalize, if you want to call it, on what it is that we First Nation educators are aspiring, are advocating for, and lobbying for First Nation education. I look at the room here today, and we have our Grand Chief Ron Michel, Grand Chief Ward Leaders, my former colleague there, Simon Berg, who's now a Superintendent of Education out of Stoney, Dakota, Chief Rick Gamble, Simon Job, Richard Job, Darren Linklater, and many others who are here today. What if we do this, and you all have registration, maybe just a quick show of hands. Back in Saskatchewan, we have an organization that represents the teachers of Saskatchewan, and it's titled Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. I look at the room and I see we're a pretty solid group. As I mentioned earlier, we're here for one common goal. And it just dawned on me sitting here listening and observing everybody here today. With your permission, just a quick show of hands. what if we start a national body, and we title it this, the Treaty Indigenous Education Federation. We have the numbers here today. I see representatives from each region, from each community and each tribal council. Is it possible that we can do that here and now? So that we have our own voice, we have our own recommendations going to the chiefs and councils. We have to have an advocating body, and this is the advocating body for our children and youth throughout Canada, throughout our treaty territories, throughout our traditional lands. So just some food for thought, we're going to throw those ideas out there to each and every one of you. I was an educator for 7 years back home. And, we're going to do what we can at the AFN level, at the FSI level, and as chief and councils as well, to finally secure funding that's so badly needed for K-12 on reserve. And I believe everything in my heart and in my mind, we're almost there. The national chief just said it, March 22nd is the federal budget, and those of you that keep up the politics, the announcement was made yesterday that this government is going to go into deficit $18 billion. And what that says, and what that means, what I took it as, and what many people took it as, was this. With the $18 billion deficit, there's going to be a big investment for what each and every one of us has been waiting for many decades. Finally, an increased funding for K-12 and post-secondary student support program. And that's a good thing. Just on the lasting note, whether we get an increased funding or not, we still all have to go back home to our schools, to our teachers, to our principals, and continue teaching our children in the classroom. So when I speak from my own experience about teaching in the classroom, and should we get an increased funding or should we not? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Are we going to continue teaching in the same school that we taught in the last 5-10 years? Or are we going to go to another classroom and get higher pay? Or is it more important to stay in the classroom and make sure these children learn? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So when we're sitting in a classroom teaching our children, we kind of have to be security guards in a sense that we got to be aware, we got to be alert of which children is learning, which children is not learning. And you got to be consistent, and you got to take the initiative to ask a child, "Can I help you with anything? Is there anything I can help you with?" Because some of our children are shy, or for whatever reason, they're not going to put up their hand and ask teacher for help. Now we get to the bullying and suicide prevention. A lot of bullying happening, a lot of teasing and whatnot throughout our schools. Frontline workers are the teachers, or the parents for 6 hours of the day. So the onus is on each and every one of us to stop the teasing and bullying when you see it happen. Don't let it escalate. Don't let it escalate until it's so bad that tragedies happen, like back in my territory, where we had a shooting because the young man was being teased. It's probably happening right now in some of our First Nations schools throughout Canada. There's teasing going on and there's bullying. So that's the way I looked at myself as a teacher, kind of like a security guard, being aware and being alert of who is learning, who's not learning, and to stop the bullying. But also the language and culture and ceremony part of it, very important aspect. For the presenters who are here today, David Arnault. I see Mark Dockstader, our president of FNUC. Minister Carol Bennett's going to be here. Those of you that want to sneak away for some time with her, she's going to be at the reception this evening. Put forward your ideas, your recommendations. It's so very important that she hears each and every one of you. I'm not sure she's going to have enough time, but the general consensus here is investment in education rather than incarceration is a far greater positive outcome for our treaty territories, our provinces, and also this country. So I look forward to the next 2 days. Peter, thank you for being the MC. We have a few more comments from a few of our Grand Chiefs. To each and every one of you to enjoy the next 2 days. We hope you contribute to as much as you can. I see Chief Rick Gamble. I don't know if I recognized you earlier, but I see you in the crowd there. Trying to hide. So hopefully it's a good 2 days, and we go home tomorrow, go back to your communities, talk to your chiefs, your councils, your elders, your grassroots people on what we learned here today. And we ask each and every one of you, when you go home, fingers crossed, to have all your elders pray that we finally get a full funding commitment here March 22nd for Indian education. Exit Wagamante, aye.
I've been in education for many, many years, starting from the takeover in 1978. Being the first education coordinator for my people back home, and bringing back our kids from the city, bringing back our kids from the residential schools. All because of what we started to look at, that education wasn't working for us when we were sending out our kids, or sometimes being forced to go into the residential schools. We look back, when the residential issue came into play. There's a lot of things that we have to change. There's a lot of things that we have to look at. I come from a family of 12. And I was the 6th. I was in the middle. All of my siblings, my older siblings and younger siblings, went to residential school. For some reason, being the 6th was the only one out of the 12 that never went to residential school. Stayed home with the parents and went to day school in Meadow. But after grade 8, he moved me to the city to live with non-Aboriginal families. In the city, and also going to a school, 3,000 students, and only a few of us First Nations were in that school. This was in the late 60s. So it was pretty hard, but we stuck to it. The tech programs came about. We took the tech programs and started creating our teachers in our reserves. Make sure that we have some some of our people in the education careers. My wife's been a teacher for 33 years. And I've been a chief for 35 years. So education was something that we had to look at, something that we wanted to build for our communities. So we could see them every day. So we could know to what degree as parents to help them succeed. So it's been a long road, but you as educators have always had faith in educators, in education. Whether you're Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, it's the child that we have to look at. It's the child that we have to look at every day. Make sure that he has the proper education. Make sure that he's nourished to make the day. So when we took over our schools in the Prince Albert Grand Council, we cleaned up the residential school, which was one of the biggest residential schools in Canada. Bring our kids home. We bought our kids from the boarding student program. I believe this is a millennium where we have to change for our kids. And I've always said that we have to make a change for our kids, but not forget the experiences that our mom and dads have to experience, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, and our brothers and sisters that have to go to an education system that didn't fit in at all in any careers. I think pulling together, as we did in Saskatchewan, we pulled together and we said no to Bill C-33. We will not let go the education that we worked so hard to build. We will not see or do or join in any authority, in any education authority that we don't have control of. We said that in front of the Minister of Bellegarde, from the Progressive Conservatives. You will make our schools, you will build our schools, and you will accommodate us as much as you do to non-Aboriginal schools, students. That's the right we have, and we'll continue to fight that right. And I applaud the chiefs that came with me that time to meet the minister and to tell him where we stand as First Nation people. Too long now we've been taken care of. Too long we've been told what to do and not to do, and what's good for us. We're human beings. But I say, again, to the educators that are here, the leadership, the elders. Thank you to the AFN for putting up this education forum and to exchange ideas. We are First Nations of this island, and we have to start expressing our sovereignty and our own governance. To the elders, thank you very much. To the educators, thank you. Thank you. If we work together, we will make what we're looking forward to. Thank you to the chiefs and also to the leadership that are here. And thanks again to the AFN for putting this conference together and exchange ideas. Kitigan, Mercy Cho, Loche, Bellegarde. Thank you and God bless you all. Get home safely back to your communities. Thank our Lord that we are here, putting us together for a reason, for our children, for our children, and for our grandchildren, and for the children that are not born yet. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Our whole country was seized with the incidents at Loche. The nearby First Nation is Clearwater, and we're honored to have both of you here today. We know it's been a very difficult period, and the outpouring of support from across the country is everywhere and is in this room. And we thought the fact that you're here with us, that we would take a moment and honor you with an honor song from our show.
Thank you very much. That was amazing, very powerful. Just to give you an update on our area, our schools are reopening, our routines are being reestablished. Community walk was held yesterday, and the high school students for the first time returned back into the building. The spirit of the walk was to take back their school. Over my time in the Loche and Clearwater River Dene Nation, I've had the honor of meeting and working with many elders, both past and present. And I can assure you that our communities will pull through this, as the people of Loche and Clearwater are not descendants of fearful people. The communities are thankful for all your thoughts and prayers, all your support. Mercy, Joe.
No, I'm child and water. Yeah. Need dogs with them and hold on. No need to. No, but they have to. I call it no home child on. I need to die true, but no, I didn't serve. No, I didn't serve. And I have mercy.